The night was so dark it looked like the sky had been switched off. The cold wind cut through the prison yard of Clinton Correctional Facility like a knife. And in that frozen darkness, something impossible was happening. 2 inmates, Richard Matt and David Sweat, were crawling out of a steaming pipe hole under the prison walls. They had just broken out of one of America's harshest and most heavily guarded places. A place known for crushing hope. A place regular inmates called the Iron Mountain. Matt popped out first. He pressed his ear against the ground, listening for footsteps or guard radios. Nothing. Then Sweat crawled out behind him, his face red from the heat of the metal pipes they had just slithered through. Their prison clothes were soaked with sweat, their hands shaking, but their eyes were burning with a wild mix of fear and excitement. They had spent months planning this moment, cutting through steel, crawling through a maze of pipes, trusting a map they had drawn by memory. For a second, both men looked at the high walls behind them, the massive grey stone that had held them for years. The watchtower lights swept past, missing them by inches. Matt whispered, "We did it. We're out." But then, out of nowhere, a siren in the distance began to scream. Not a normal siren. A prison siren. The kind that meant someone had discovered something. Matt and Sweat froze. Was it for them? Had someone already noticed their empty beds? Were the guards coming right now? The 2 men locked eyes, breathing hard, unsure if they should run into the woods or crawl back into the pipes to hide. And then, a distant voice crackled over a prison intercom. A guard yelling, shouting something they could not fully hear. This was the moment everything could collapse. They had seconds, maybe less, to decide. And just as Matt chose to run, everything in the story jumps back to the very beginning. Years before that terrifying night, Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, was already known as one of the toughest prisons in the United States. Thick stone walls, guard towers on every corner, the kind of place where nobody even dreamed of escaping. Most inmates didn't even think it was possible. They were locked in cells so cold in winter you could see your own breath. The metal doors slammed shut so loudly it echoed inside your chest. Inside that world were 2 inmates who would soon shock America. Richard Matt, older, confident, and always smiling like he knew something everyone else didn't. He was known for talking his way into and out of almost anything. Some guards even liked him because he painted portraits for them. He acted calm, friendly, almost charming, but he had a dangerous past that no one could forget. And then there was David Sweat, quieter, younger, always studying things. He never bragged, never yelled, never fought unless he had no choice. But he had something most inmates didn't have: patience. He could work on one idea for months without giving up. Sweat was the kind of man who could stare at a wall and still be thinking 5 steps ahead. Nobody knew it then, but the meeting of these 2 men would set off one of the most unbelievable prison escapes in American history. At first, life inside Clinton was slow, cold, and repetitive. The days blended into each other: wake up, count time, breakfast, work, back to the cell, lights out. Sweat worked in the prison shop. Matt worked as an artist in a special area because his paintings were impressive. But both of them noticed something that most inmates ignored: the prison had old pipes and tunnels underneath. Some blocked, some forgotten, and some rarely used. Matt joked about escape one day while painting, telling Sweat, "Every prison has a loose stitch. You just have to find where the thread starts." Sweat didn't laugh. He whispered back, "Maybe we already found it." After that, everything changed. They began paying attention to things other inmates didn't care about. The sound of pipes under the floor. When guards changed shifts. Which walls were thick and which ones were old. The 2 men started talking quietly at night through air vents. They shared ideas, dangerous ideas, but they kept their voices low because in prison, even a whisper can ruin everything. Then came the moment that pushed their plan forward, the day Sweat heard something unusual while he was working in the prison workshop. He tapped a metal area on the wall and heard a hollow echo. Not solid stone, something else. A space. He didn't tell Matt immediately. Instead, he waited until they were alone. When he finally did, Matt's eyes lit up, like someone had just handed him a key. But even with that discovery, escaping was still impossible without help. Guards watched everything. Cameras captured every hallway. And tools strong enough to cut through steel were kept locked away. That's when Joyce Mitchell, known by inmates as Tilly, came into the picture. She worked in the tailor shop inside the prison. She talked too much, laughed too loudly, and liked attention more than she admitted. Many inmates noticed she liked friendly conversation, especially with men who complimented her. Matt saw that first. And he used it. He smiled at her. He joked with her. He told her she looked nice today. Soon she started bringing him extra sewing supplies, extra fabric, and eventually, things much more dangerous. She thought she was helping a man who cared about her. Matt thought she was helping him escape. With Tilly's help, Sweat and Matt got what they needed. Blades hidden inside frozen hamburger meat, small tools that no one checked carefully enough, and the ability to move around parts of the prison at times when other inmates couldn't. Night after night, they worked. Cutting. Scraping. Digging. The walls behind their beds slowly opened, little by little, hidden under cardboard sheets painted to look like the real wall. Sweat used his patience to map out the pipe system under the prison. Matt used his charm to keep the guards unsuspecting. But it was dangerous. If a guard walked in at the wrong time, just once, the entire plan would collapse. One night, Sweat was cutting the edge of a pipe, sparks flying into his face. They were almost done for the night when they heard footsteps. A guard. Right outside their cells. The metal cutting tool was still hot in Sweat's hand. He couldn't hide it. Matt couldn't distract the guard this time. The guard stopped. Right in front of Sweat's door. Sweat's heart slammed against his ribs so hard he thought the guard could hear it. The guard stared at him for a moment. Then, unbelievably, the guard just yawned and said, "Counts in 5 minutes," before walking away. Sweat collapsed to the floor, shaking, sweat running down his face. They were close, too close, to losing everything. Days passed. Weeks passed. And slowly, their tunnel grew until they finally reached the old steam pipe area under the prison. It was dark, loud, and boiling hot. Some nights Sweat had to crawl with his shirt over his face just to breathe. But neither of them stopped. When they finally cut the last pipe and created the opening that would lead outside the walls, Matt looked at the hole and whispered, "This is it. This is freedom." But freedom didn't come fast. They needed one last thing, a getaway. Tilly had promised to pick them up in her car the night of the escape. She said she would drive them far away, maybe even across the border. Matt trusted her. Sweat didn't. Still, the date was set. June 6, 2015. The night everything would change. When it finally arrived, the prison seemed almost too quiet. Matt and Sweat moved through the tunnels like shadows, following the chalk line Sweat had drawn secretly. They slid through the pipe, crawled under the walls, and finally popped out through the street drain. They expected to see Tilly's car. But she wasn't there. Not yet. And as they waited, hearts pounding, hands shaking, a sound sliced through the night. A noise coming from behind them. Inside the pipe they had just escaped from. Someone, or something, was crawling through the darkness toward them. And before either man could speak, another sound tore across the prison yard. A voice. A shout. A flashlight beam cutting across the ground. Someone had spotted movement. Matt grabbed Sweat's arm. "Run!" And that was when an even bigger problem appeared, something neither of them had planned for. Matt didn't wait another second. He yanked Sweat's arm so hard Sweat almost fell forward. The two men sprinted away from the drain pipe, their feet slapping the pavement. The cold night air burned their lungs, and every breath felt too loud, like the guards could hear them from a mile away. Behind them, the flashlight beam swept back and forth like a hunter searching for prey. They had one chance, just one, to disappear into the darkness before someone got close enough to see their faces. "Keep low," Sweat whispered, gasping for air. Matt didn't answer. He was too busy running. The older man was fast for someone his age, but Sweat could tell he was already tiring. The two men ducked behind a short stone wall at the edge of the prison property, both crouching with their backs pressed against the cold rock. Another flashlight beam flashed across the road. Footsteps. Radios crackling. "Did you hear that? I thought I saw something move." Sweat closed his eyes for a moment, trying to keep his breathing quiet. If they were caught now, everything they had done, all the nights crawling through hot pipes, all the cutting and planning, would be gone in an instant. Matt whispered, "This wasn't supposed to happen. Tilly should have been here." "She isn't," Sweat whispered back, anger rising in his voice. "We have to move." They waited until the flashlight beam drifted away, and the guards walked a few steps in the opposite direction. Matt peeked over the stone wall, then whispered, "Now." They darted into the trees. The forest beside the prison was thick, dark, and unforgiving. Branches slapped their faces. Roots caught their feet. Sweat led the way, weaving between the trees like a shadow. Matt followed behind him, breathing hard, occasionally stumbling. Neither of them spoke for the first few minutes. They were too busy listening for sirens, voices, barking dogs, anything. Finally, when the prison lights were far behind them, Sweat slowed down. Matt collapsed onto an old fallen log, gasping, his breath turning white in the cold air. "She said she'd be here," Matt whispered, shaking his head. "She promised me." Sweat wasn't surprised. He had never trusted Tilly fully. She liked excitement, but running away with 2 escaped inmates was a different kind of danger. The kind that came with prison bars and handcuffs. "She didn't come," Sweat said. "So now we need a new plan." Matt rubbed his forehead with a shaky hand. "You think she talked?" Sweat thought about that for a moment. If she talked, they'd already be here. Sirens everywhere. Guards flooding the woods. Matt nodded slowly, his breath finally steadying. "So she just chickened out." "Looks like it." Both men sat in silence for a moment, the cold wind biting their skin. They were free, but only barely. And now they had to find somewhere to hide before daylight. "North," Sweat said finally. "We go north. Toward the railroad tracks." Matt looked at him. "Canada." "Eventually." Matt grinned. "I always did want to paint a maple leaf." Sweat didn't smile. "We have to move before sunrise." They started walking again, pushing deeper into the forest. Branches snapped under their feet. Sweat kept checking behind them, making sure they weren't being followed. Matt muttered to himself occasionally, cursing Tilly for failing them. As they walked, Sweat's mind replayed the last 6 months. The cutting. The planning. The secret meetings. The risks they had taken. He thought about how close they had come to being caught, especially that night the guard almost saw the tool in his hand. He remembered holding his breath so long he nearly passed out. But none of that mattered now. They were out. And they had to stay out. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a small stream. The moonlight reflected on the water, making it look like a strip of silver cutting through the forest. Sweat kneeled and dipped his hands in. The water was freezing. Matt sat on a rock, staring at the sky. "Do you think they discovered our beds yet?" Sweat shook his head. "Not yet. Count doesn't happen until early morning. We have time." Matt nodded, though his face looked tired, older, and more worried than Sweat had ever seen. "We'll need food," Matt said. "And something warm." "And a place to sleep," Sweat added. Matt laughed a little. "This isn't exactly a 5-star vacation." Sweat didn't respond. He was listening again. Always listening. But this time, the forest was quiet. Too quiet. They kept walking, following the stream until it split into 2. Sweat chose the left side because it led toward the railroad tracks. They were still miles away, but not impossible to reach before daylight. As they walked, Sweat felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. He had dreamed of freedom for years, but now that he finally had it, everything felt heavy on his shoulders. He was responsible, for himself and for Matt. If one of them slipped, made a noise, or left a trail, they'd both be finished. After another hour, Matt stopped suddenly. "Wait." Sweat turned. "What?" Matt pointed at the ground. "Look." Sweat crouched down. In the soft mud near the stream bed were fresh boot prints. Not theirs. Bigger. Wider. Deep. "Someone's been here," Sweat whispered. Matt's voice lowered. "A guard."